When a mission goes awry, is there any hope of getting it back on track?
Just how long is Westfield's leash with the higher ups?
Will Joe ever be able to find a work-life balance?
And dang, can Nicole Kidman play someone tough as nails?
Red and Red Real Reviews goes on a special mission for season 2 of Paramount's Lioness.
Ahoy, ladies! I didn't see you there. Would you guys like to set sail on this ocean of flavor?
Randall, look at eye contact. You're gonna be cool, right?
Oh, baby, I'm as cool as the other side of the pillow.
Been staring at this board for days.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you win or you die.
Act. Bears eat beets.
My brain is on fire. I'm dying.
I am the one who knocks.
Bears. Beets. Battlestar Galactica.
When they say 2% milk, I don't know what the other 98% is.
It's hard to believe we're even the same species.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh my god. The microchip has been compromised.
Dracarys.
And welcome back to another episode of Red and Red. So we haven't done many repeats where we've reviewed something a prior season in the past season of our show. So this is one of the first. I don't think it's the first, but it's one of the first.
Getting there. I think we've done at least one more. And then there was Cobra Kai, which...
Oh, right. Yeah, so this is one of the first, and we covered Lioness. It was like the third or fourth episode of our show from the first season. So yeah. This is kind of an interesting one because we left off kind of on an odd note because that show we thought was a limited series. And I think maybe soon after we recorded that episode, we found out that they were going to bring it back for a second season. So we found out it wasn't a limited series after all.
Yeah. Even though I guess they changed the title, so maybe
yes.
they still can pull that off, that limited series moniker.
Maybe, yeah, because they did rebrand. It was Special Ops: Lioness.
Yeah.
A little bit different. So we have a shorter version of that rebrand. So I don't know. So, having reviewed the first season of the show, what were your feelings kind of going into it this time?
I had an open mind because I enjoyed season 1. It was just that unnecessary pansexual adventure by Cruz that kind of left a little bit of a sour taste at the end. But I thought the acting was very crisp. The story worked. I love tactical military dramas. So I still had an open mind, and, just the way season 1 ended, I was like, you know what? It still wrapped it up nicely with a bow. So I was like, I will have an open mind with this one.
Yeah, that's kind of, I would say it's similar to how I was going into this season. I was hoping that obviously it seemed like each season will be a different mission or a different focus. So I was like, okay, I hope they have a really compelling story or mission this season, something to focus on. And I mean, I would agree, most of last season was pretty good. It was that 6-episode mark where Cruz suddenly was in love with Aaliyah, and we were like, what the hell? Like, why? Come on. And so my hope was that would be redeemed, that we would get a good story with substance, that I would give the show the benefit of the doubt, right? That was kind of my whole thing. So that was my hope going into it.
It kind of, like, to me, the way this season started, I felt like it had more momentum than the first season did when the first season started.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I felt like I think it was like the first 2 episodes in particular were a little bit more quick in getting going because we already knew the characters. At least it was
right
where we could just kind of hop right into it. The same thing as Tulsa King, just kind of hopped right into it, which was good.
Yeah, there's you don't have to establish anyone.
Right. So, we did talk about how we had all the repeat Taylor Sheridan actors. in the first season. We did discuss that. So, obviously Two Cups is one of the long-standing ones who's been in tons of Taylor Sheridan stuff. But with
Everyone,
this,
if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, a lot of people. So we did have some new faces this season, aside from the recycled Taylor Sheridan actors. So one of the um primary actors was I didn't even get down the actress's name actually. So Carrillo or Carrillo, I don't know how we want to pronounce it. It's probably
Brillo.
Carrillo.
It might be, but I never heard them pronounce it
Carrillo, I think,
that.
is like the American pronunciation of it. Yeah. So we'll call her Carrillo. And she's actually Sloane from Umbrella Academy, the one that had a relationship with Luther.
Oh, let's see.
Do you
I did
remember
not.
that from the second to the last season? They were all like loved up and like it was because she was from the other squad, so it was kind of like
Yeah,
a controversy, but they were like all about each other for a while there.
yeah. I vaguely remember that, and I didn't catch that at all, and I think probably because I just eradicated Umbrella Academy from my memory. But I, I think now I'm like starting to picture Sloane, and I think like the imagery of how they did her makeup and everything. I would not have even put them one to one together at all, even if I did recognize the actress.
Yeah, I think her hair was different. She looked quite a bit different. So yeah, we have Sloane, and then I don't know if you know anything about this, but the woman who played Senator Albright, I was like, why does this lady look familiar? And it's Robin Lively, who is Blake Lively's older sister, who she was in a couple movies in the 80s, I believe, like when she was a teenager or in her 20s, she was
Mhm.
known as an actress. She's considerably older than Blake Lively. I want to say she's 10 to 15 years older. So I think she's in her 50s or late 40s. So I recognized her in a few episodes as Senator Albright.
I didn't even know Blake Lively had a sister, let alone older or
Yeah.
younger. So 0 for 2 on my part.
And then I know this wasn't a show that you watched, but Agent Gutierrez, this guy, he had a very characteristic voice, like a really kind of like hoarse, like booming voice. And I was like, I recognize this voice. And I could not figure out what I knew him from. He was a big villain that had a pretty long arc in the show Arrow, which was on the CW about the Green Arrow. So that's what I recognized him from. And I think he's been in a bunch of other stuff because his name, when I looked up the actor's name, it looked familiar. Like I've definitely seen it in credits before.
You are the master of picking up CW actors.
I watched a hell of a lot of the CW in the years past, not recently. I actually isn't CW not around anymore?
I don't think it is. Well, no, I don't. It is or got rebranded because it was bought by someone. I think they still call it CW though.
Oh, really? Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't even know if there's any shows on it anymore. I don't watch anything on the CW. I haven't in a while. Arrow ended around 2020 and it was awful. It was a very awful last couple seasons.
I still call it
The
WPIX.
WB,
Yeah, WV.
WB, WWW. Yeah, it's very nostalgic.
Animaniacs. Sorry.
Yeah. And then we're not sure if we mentioned it on air or if we mentioned it, in our messages to each other, but I sort of realized that Neil, the actor who plays him, I think it's Dave Annable. I don't know how to
Yeah.
pronounce it.
Annabelle or
Annable.
Annabelle, something.
Yeah. He is Lee, the brother from Yellowstone who dies in the first season or in the first few episodes. So there was a funny story he told on like the Kelly Clarkson show that he's naturally all gray, so he
Mhm.
had to dye his hair to play Lee. He dyed his hair like brown.
Yeah, and I think that's probably why he's not as recognizable outside of the
Right.
fact that he was only in one episode. But I think that the arc of Neil's character, which we can get into later,
Yeah.
it makes he does such a great job in this portrayal. It makes me really sad that Lee was only in one episode of Yellowstone, because I really would have liked to see what he could have added to that cast of Yellowstone that's otherwise phenomenal, of course.
I know, and he's been around for a while. He's been a working actor. So yeah, I'm kind of sad that we're just finding out about his work right now with this show.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Yellowstone, further Yellowstone links, we have the actress's name is Dawn Olivieri, and you might not recognize that name, but that's Sarah Atwood from Yellowstone.
The evil one.
Yeah. And so, I mean, obviously you pointed out she does have a very characteristic voice, kind of a low voice, for a woman. And I feel like in this current season of Yellowstone, that's, just ending, it seems like she has been wearing a wig for this half of Yellowstone. It just doesn't really look legit to me. So I think she's wearing a short hair wig. And I mean, obviously, she had a big long ponytail in this, so that could be an extension. That could be a clip-on pony, of course. But but yeah, she has a big long ponytail that she has in a braid. I think her character's name is Amber, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
I looked it up on IMDb because I didn't remember where they said her character's name. But I was surprised that I was a couple episodes ahead of you at the time, so I
Yeah.
just like, hey, there's a familiar face coming, and your jaw's gonna drop, and you said, and later you said, who was it? I'm like, I was so surprised. I'm like, how? Like her voice instantly rang to me, and I'm like, how did you not recognize her?
Yeah, it's funny. I after her demise on Yellowstone, I came across an article that was like, oh, all is not lost. She's gonna, she may be done with Yellowstone, but she's gonna pop up in the show Lioness. And I was like, oh, okay. And I had already been halfway through
Waiting.
it. So I looked it up on IMDb and I think it said 2 or 3 episodes or something. So I was like, oh, I haven't seen her yet. And
Yeah,
then
remember
then I
that.
got to the 7th episode and I was like, wait, I only have one episode left. Where is she? And I must have missed her in that 7th episode.
I will. I mean that room, that briefing room where she first came in, it was darkly lit,
Yeah.
which is probably like you kind of noticed her hair after the fact. I didn't notice anything about her hair, but like also could have been darkly lit. And then of course when they're actually when she's actually playing intel for their mission, she's got her
Yeah.
hair tied back.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. And I did not notice either that she has a very prominent mole on her cheek. And this, you noticed it. You noticed it from the side. Like this is a ginormous mole. So it's like, how could we have missed this? So it's possible they were covering it up on Yellowstone, or the fact that, she had kind of a short, like, angled haircut. It could have been like, covering the part on her cheek. Could have
Mm.
been her hair could have been covering it. So, I mean, I'm probably the weird one here. Like, I have an aversion to moles where they make me like physically sick. Like I see them, I'm just like, ugh. Like I'm like, why can't you get that thing cut off your face, please? Like it grosses me out beyond belief. They like look at me and talk to me. I don't like it.
Well, I don't have any of the paranormal reactions from it, but I'm not a big mole person either. I never really understood the Cindy Crawford thing.
Yeah, and especially when moles are, this is gross, but like when moles are big enough and like raised enough that they have like hairs growing out of them.
That's extreme.
I feel like Cindy Crawford's mole probably has a few hairs growing out of it, and that just like repulses me.
Yeah, when they're big enough, here we sound so vain. when they when they become big enough where they're like they draw your focus, that's kind of when I'm a little less enthused. The like we brought up Blake Lively. She's got a mole somewhere on her face, but hers is not. It's not that distracting.
Hers is pretty flat. It's
Yeah,
not this actress's, you could see the mold from the mold. You can see the mole from the side, like it was like popping out,
maybe
like with a profile shot.
Maybe they did pour a mold of it. You never know.
Yeah. And then of course the last thing is that we see Taylor Sheridan pop up in this show as Cody. He was in maybe 2 to 3 episodes, the first couple, and then the one at the end. So we see
For,
him acting again, flexing his acting muscle like we did in Yellowstone the other night. And yeah, so I mean he's one of his own recurring characters.
a pretty significant role outside of Travis in Yellowstone. I mean, most of the
Yeah.
time his cameos are pretty brief, but I thought that this one, I mean, there was like a few episodes in the middle where we didn't really see him, but he was boom right away at the top of the season, and then he was had a significant role in the last mission.
Yeah, I thought he did a great job as Cody. I liked his arc as Cody. It was just a very dramatic turn. You
Mhm.
know, we saw him as like this Playboy Travis in
Yes.
Yellowstone. So it actually was a welcomed thing to see him in a dramatic role. I think he did a great job with it. Like I understand why he started out as an actor because obviously he has a passion for it if he's casting himself in his own shows.
Yeah, I feel bad that he kind of got the short end of the stick with casting calls and whatnot.
Yeah, it makes you
Maybe,
feel bad for him. Like it's not that he didn't have the skill for it. I think he's believable as an actor. He's maybe better than some actors on the show.
yeah, he's it maybe he was just meant to be a supporting instead of a leading candidate.
Yeah, perhaps.
The other one that I noticed, and Holler, one of Mullen's staff members, or maybe he was another Congress member of Congress. I don't know. He had his face. I'm like, I know that face from somewhere. So when I was going over the notes and I looked up familiar face, like let me just see if I recognize something. I clicked on him, and he's the sheriff from My Cousin Vinny. I don't know how I didn't recognize him.
Which one is Holler?
The the older fellow in when they're in the meetings when Westfield and Caitlin are in the meetings with Mullins and they're trying to go over like, hey, this is the mission. We need congressional approval. We need state approval for it.
So is he the one that's always with that other lady that
Yeah,
has like the beauty mark right here or something?
yeah, he's got the goatee, the gray goatee.
Okay, he's
Yeah.
been in a lot of stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't that guy was definitely we might have talked about this the first season. That guy was definitely familiar. He's been in other stuff for
Yeah,
sure.
My Cousin Vinny.
My cousin Vinny. Okay.
Identical.
Yeah. Oh, we talked about when we did Tulsa King how a lot of our feelings about the characters kind of carried over from the first season. So, did you feel different about any characters this season, or do you feel like it's more of the same feelings or thoughts just carried over?
Some yes, some no. One thing that was kind of like, I don't want to say rubs me the wrong way, but the team is always an afterthought as far as like really
Mm,
getting to know them. And
yeah.
I like Bobby a lot. I like Two Cups a lot, especially the farting scene they had where they're trying
Yeah.
to decide who gets the bedrooms.
Yeah.
And even like Tucker and Tex, like they're kind of just tertiary characters, but
Mhm.
they're kind of traditional military masculine men. So it kind of like is an adrenaline rush when they're doing the kick ass stuff.
Yeah, I agree. I would have liked to see more of the stuff with the team and the team togetherness because that was where the heart of the show was for me. Even just Bobby being a more funny character and
Mm-hmm.
getting to love Bobby and I like even though it's I wouldn't say dysfunctional really, but the whole like Two Cups and Bobby are like brother and sister pretty much.
Yeah,
A lot of people on to borrow the phrase that companies like to say, we're like a family here, but in the military,
collaboration.
yeah, and synergy. In the military, you really are a family though, and they're like brothers and sister with Bobby. So I would have liked to see more of that.
And
And
it's
I
not,
yeah.
and that's not the only one that Bobby has because when Cody's team comes in, they become aware that Tracer and Bobby, I guess, were married at one point when Bobby was not, when Bobby was still straight.
Oh, they were married. I thought that
Oh,
they had just dated or something. Did they
oh
say that
well,
they were married?
whatever. What? Yeah, the
Yeah, I
married
they
lovers dating, whatever it was.
yeah, I did like the fact that there were there were references to their past relationship, which were really funny that people were giving them shit for. Didn't we find out in the first season that Kyle and Joe had dated previously?
Um,
I'm pretty sure we did because that's the reason why they're like butting heads all the time and they kind of hate each other, but there's like a tension to me.
I felt like there was some implication that either they may have had a fling or at some point.
Yeah, it was just
Um,
kind of in passing. It wasn't like something that they harped on. It was something that they mentioned once, as far
yeah, I
as what
don't.
I remember.
Yeah, I don't remember if they actually confirmed that or if it was just a will they, won't they kind of deal.
Yeah, but I
Something,
remember that.
something to kind of play up the strife at the time between Joe and Neil's marriage.
Yeah, and there's still tension between Joe and Kyle where she kind of treats him a little bit like a brother, or they just kind of hate each other.
I think it's because they're both alphas. I think
Yeah.
they probably like Kyle. Probably we don't know what Kyle's background is as far as uh his military
Mm.
lineage, but it feels like he probably led his own team at one point. So it's probably like two team leaders that can't coexist kind of deal.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into it later, but I actually would like to see more about Kyle and his past and whatnot. I don't know if they could do that for a future season, but
Spin off.
spin-off. Speaking of someone who was from the first season, but I think I sort of gained more respect for was Byron. I think you call him by his last name. I call him by his first name.
Westfield.
That's Westfield. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is our House of Cards friend Michael Kelly, of course.
Yes.
And
Doug. Yay, Doug.
yeah. So I mean, in this season, I think we see a little bit more of him being, advocating for going towards what he wants and what he thinks is right. And he can be a straight up savage at times, but I generally found him a little bit more likable, just seeing, what his family, like what his home is like, his home life is like, seeing, I think at one point when Joe or Caitlin calls him, he's at one of his kids' games or something. So he is a super high CIA official, but he's still just a ordinary guy at the end of the day. So I feel like between this season and last, I gained more respect for him and actually enjoyed him as a character.
I think they probably I thought he was pretty savage in the first season, but they kind of refine it's either they refined him a little bit where he was more focused, or it was seeing him more as a featured character where it was more on display. Um, but I felt like the show kind of leveled him up a little bit because they kind of play up more of a contested, angsty relationship with Mullins and his staff. And him and Caitlin are kind of, it feels like they're more partners with their division of the agency as opposed to just kind of two ships flying in the night alongside each other, and Caitlin's more a parallel with Joe. This one, it felt like she was more of a parallel with Westfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was that they did in the second season a little bit more is they kind of had Byron challenging authority more. Because wasn't there a part where he was talking with Edwin, who is that Mullins?
Yeah,
That's played by
Morgan
Morgan
Freeman.
Freeman.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Morgan Freeman kind of says like, are you like kind of accuses him of talking out of turn, is like you're gonna say that, like
yeah.
do you know who you're talking, or maybe it's Holler, is that his name?
Holler said it. Holler said it at one point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Holler. I think he's in a meeting with Morgan Freeman, Holler, and I forget the other lady's name, but yeah, I think they accuse him of. They're like, "Do you know who you're talking to? Look around the room, like, because he kind of comes forward with something. He's swinging, and they're like, "Damn, like, do you really want to say that to the room of people that you're in?"
yeah, and I think that's because he's their State Department. Like it's like CIA versus
Yeah.
State Department. So I guess it's like a position that is just that is just handed to a person versus someone that's nominated has to go through hearings and whatnot. But when they're at each other's throats, to me it feels like he's just trying to stick up for his team and his division. Like he's just
Yes.
trying to cover his ass on that one. Like, no, this is not my fault. This happened. X, Y, and Z went through, and that's why we're in the situation we were in, and we had to react to it.
And getting to other people kind of on the Lioness team. You had a note about Carrillo.
I didn't find her to be very endearing.
Yeah.
Like as far as I guess she's kind of like, even though Cruz is in this season, she's kind of like the new Cruz.
Yeah.
And Cruz, I found up until the wacky stuff at the end
Yeah.
of the first season, I found Cruz's character very endearing.
Mm.
It's kind of like someone reinventing herself. She's had a rough life and embraced her new roles and responsibilities. But I didn't get that with Carrillo because she's established as this really badass helicopter pilot, and then she goes to meet with the team, and she's like shy or modest with sharing the shower. And I know we'll get into the elephant in the room later, but knowing that in hindsight, and it's like she had a problem with that, but Bobby has no problem with that, and it can't just be because Bobby's been with these guys for years. You know what I
Well,
mean?
also she was in the military, so hasn't she been to boot camp at some point? Like,
Yeah,
hasn't she been in situations where she's dealt with that before? So
especially if she's a captain with a decorated pilot history.
yeah, so that was a little bit yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I didn't really find her very endearing, or like I wanted to root for her a lot.
And the other part of that also kind of felt contradictive to how they try to establish her is when she starts to come in contact more with Pablo, her father,
Yeah.
and she kind of has this like kind of daddy issues things like,
Mm.
oh, I'm insecurity, feelings of insecurity and that sort of thing. So it's like the the puzzle pieces don't line up with her. You know what I mean? How her character is constructed.
Yeah, she's not really as tough as she was made out to be,
Yeah, real
I
soft.
think. Um, so I guess for me, the main, I wouldn't say differences, but the feelings I felt most strongly about were one, I gained more sympathy for Neil and the situations he has to deal with as a doctor, the stress that he has to deal with, not to mention he's the primary caretaker of the kids. Like he's just doing the best he can to survive from day to day, going through the things he goes through as a doctor, dealing with loss and dealing with death. And then he has his wife being like, "Oh, sorry, honey, I gotta go again. I don't know when I'm gonna be back." Like, so like Joe is constantly gone. And so that's the Neil and Joe relationship is kind of like what I feel the most about. It obviously in the first season we get a bit of that arc of the roller coaster nature of their relationship. And then in this season, at the beginning, we kind of saw them like kind of getting the spark back in their marriage. And then it all just kind of went to shit pretty quickly with her taking off again and really putting her job first. And I don't know. From what I can see, I was on Reddit, after this episode aired, the seventh episode, because I was just like, oh God, so I went on Reddit and I'm reading all these threads, and it seems like a good amount of people are annoyed by the character of Joe. And I find the character of Joe to be pretty annoying. Like I did find her annoying the first season, but I think even more so this season. Like she just what stands out to me is the moment when she's in the hospital bed and Neil comes to see her and she's like yelling at him. And I was like, man, she's just treating this guy like shit. And then she's just yelling at everybody. And I I think it kind of might also be Zoe Saldana's acting as well. Like that annoys me. Yeah, I mean, sometimes when she's playing, like when she told that story to her daughter about her grandfather or whatever, that I found very compelling and that was great acting, but when she's just like yelling her throat raw and like throwing these tantrums, it's just like overacting and it's not very good in my opinion. So that tends to annoy me. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of the actress annoying me and it's a little bit of the character annoying me and joining together to band huge annoyance.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I will admit she does overact sometimes, and I don't find that very believable in a military
Yeah.
sense because you're supposed to keep your emotions are supposed to be kept in check,
Mm-hmm.
and the people that don't keep their emotions in check usually wind up dead. Uh,
And they don't
but
wind up in high positions, do they? Probably not.
I would think, well, in the last few years, who knows? Maybe.
Mm, true.
Certainly not historically, but I, like Zoe Saldana in general doesn't evoke those emotions with me only because I see her growth from things like Star Trek and Marvel, which are, I mean, they're mainstream now, but those were very niche things at one point. So like to grow up from those and now playing roles that aside from the occasional overacting, this is a far different role from that kind of thing. So it kind of like I see the growth and it's like, okay, there's an outburst here or there, but for the most part, this is kind of a progression of her career from those big time roles in the past.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too for me. It's like which came first, the chicken or the egg? Like is it her acting or her interpretation of this character from the writing on the page, or is it the writing that's making her appear this way? So it's kind of hard to determine.
That's true.
And another thing that I put in my notes that you were kind of wondering if it's intentional or not is it seemed like they're trying to make the friendship of they're trying to make Caitlin and Joe like friendship goals, kind of. You know what I mean? Like with I think it's when Caitlin is talking to, is it Gutierrez? And he says that she's accusing him of being the one to make the mission go wrong, like it was all his doing. And he's saying, listen, why would I do that? One of my best friends was killed. And this is a guy I knew he was my best man at my wedding or something like that. And was saying, I lost my best friend. And she said, well, I almost lost my best friend. And like, we're supposed to feel bad for her because Joe is considered her best friend, but they're just not very, like, I don't know if she was just saying that to try to, I wouldn't say pull on his heartstrings, but just trying to make him think that she had a stake in it as well. But it seemed like there was a few times, I think it's when Joe gets on the plane and she realized that she's shot and she calls Caitlin. I think it's supposed to be that we're supposed to think that they do have this very close friendship. And I just did not find it genuine, believable. There was no chemistry between Nicole Kidman and Zoe Saldana as far as a friendship. So, what were your thoughts on that?
I don't know whether it's I don't know whether we're supposed to get warm and squishy feelings
Yeah.
because Caitlin is a very cold and unemotional character.
Yeah.
And I think that you can also see that in terms of her marriage with Errol, whereas like this is one of these typical Washington D.C. elite type of marriages where they're only together for the sake of power.
Yeah.
We see that in real life with, I'll use the Clintons as an example. We saw that in The Diplomat. We kind of got that feeling with Hal and Kate. So like I kind of feel like there's a cold emotion to Nicole Kidman's portrayal here. Maybe it's just her overall acting prowess, but there's something like that where I think is a little bit more by design than accidental and disingenuous.
That's what I wonder because I do feel like in both seasons of this show, Nicole Kidman's performance, it felt very flat to me, but that's the thing is I'm not sure if it's supposed to be that way. Is she supposed to just be really stoic, really cold? I don't know. It's hard to figure out what the writers were intending or what they're thinking, but I just had the hardest time focusing on anything but Nicole Kidman's giant earlobes because I think she's had far too many facelifts, and I was just like, why are her earlobes way down here?
I'll bring this full circle. Hop back a half a step to bring this full circle.
All right.
Maybe because you say you find her in general to be kind of flat as an
Yeah.
actress. So maybe this is the perfect role for her then, where emotion does not have to be at the forefront of her portrayal.
Yeah, maybe. It's again, it's like I wonder if they did that for their like just saying that okay, maybe this is what friendship looks like in the CIA or in the
Yeah.
military. You know, maybe that's the point they're trying to make by making it not very like warm and caring.
Well, it's that very possible. Yeah, because you have to be very strictly business. Um, I will say the earlobe thing I didn't even notice, but that's probably just me. Big ears don't necessarily bother me because I kind of got big ears too.
Well, no, it's not. It's not big ears. It's like her ears are like stretched out. It's very odd. You'll have to next time you see Nicole Kidman, you'll have to check it out.
Like a 2 gauge.
It's insane. Like you can't unsee it once you see it. So that's my warning to everyone who's going to go Google Nicole Kidman's earlobes right now.
I do want to hop back to Neil real quick, only
Yeah.
because he is one, well, not one of probably my favorite character in the series. And when he's getting so mad at Joe, I think it's because not necessarily because she's going away again, because I
Mm.
think they established in this season that he's okay with this. You know, the love they have for each other will endure the what her job is and requires of her. But I think what gets him set off is the fact that he is a respected and accomplished doctor and
Hmm.
surgeon for that matter. And he's trying to tell her, you can't rush back into this.
Right.
Those pop open and you're on the battlefield. You better hope you bleed out and die. Because that is not, that's one, if you don't suffer to death, the terrorists that you're fighting are going to torture you and make the rest of your life miserable. So I think that's kind of what brought them back to us thinking, oh my goodness, they're not going to make it. We're right back to where we were in season one. But and almost to the point where the final scene where she comes home and he's on the doors and he's on the front steps. I was really wondering if that was even going to happen. I thought that maybe he was like, no, we're done. That's it. You know, that was kind of the last straw situation.
Yeah, it seemed like what really set him off, and I would be insulted too, probably, is when, yeah, she comes home, she doesn't heed his medical advice, and she's like, "You're my husband, not my doctor," or something like that. I think
Mm-hmm.
that really kind of set him off because he was angry after that.
Yeah, if anything, that's the doctor you probably should listen to the most, the one that you're emotionally involved attached to.
Yes. Now speaking of heavy and serious stuff, this show can be pretty heavy, pretty emotional, dealing with these important missions, especially with the whole child trafficking plot line that Joe kind of unearths. So, what more kind of either moments of heart or lighthearted moments did you enjoy to kind of break up the heaviness?
My first one is not necessarily a funny moment, but you hinted at it before when Joe is explaining to Kate why she enlisted, and she tells the story of her grandfather, and that's something that like it felt nice to see on screen because a sense of patriotism or even nationalism is not something that Hollywood usually embraces, or even the mainstream media as a whole in general. So that kind of felt good to watch to see them really glow up, this sense of duty or honor that she has in her and why she can't stop doing what she does.
Yeah, and I think too, like we all have, not as many these days, I feel like being in the military is not as common, but we probably know someone, we all know somebody who's been in the military or has fought in a war or been a part of that. And I don't think we've ever probably asked them, why did you join the military?
Mhm. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we just we see them serve and we pay our respects to them, but we don't ever actually delve into their motivations behind it.
Yeah, it would be interesting to hear why those people join up. What's the catalyst for that? And the moment she explains with her grandfather.
Mhm.
Um, and let's see, I just had a funny little line, because Caitlin is so like stoic, and I I was just kind of thinking of her as like, because she's so like deadpan, I was like, she's kind of like, she can be a little bit like I don't want to say goth, but just kind of dark.
Goth.
Like she's just kind of like, she's just kind of unemotional. So
Mhm.
I don't remember who it is, but someone asks Caitlin how she takes her coffee, and she says, "Black is my first husband's heart." And I just was like snickering at that.
Yeah, and I think that was almost kind of like a good way to cut the tension in that scene because
Yeah.
I think that was when Joe has her first blow up when she thinks people are trying to take away her control of the team.
Yeah. So that was a funny little line to break it up. You had
I had
um yeah, a moment from Neil.
I had to, of course, I had a moment from Deal. um, I had to dial back in my notes because I kind of got into the mission thing, so I had to remind myself of things I wrote down that were funny. And one was it was when Neil and Joe, they're kind of having their reconciliation phase, and they're back to being loving husband and wife. And Joe asked to eat breakfast with the kids, and one of them, probably Kate, I don't know, could have been Charlie for all I know, but one of them asks if they can eat their breakfast with ketchup, and Neil responds, it's like, sure, I don't see why not, unless they pass legislation to make it illegal, which I hope is soon. And I just really started laughing at that because I used to ketchup, as a little kid, ketchup's your condiment of choice, but like as you get older, I'm like, ketchup sucks. Team mustard all the way.
Oh, I'm not a mustard person.
Oh,
I'm a person who, when I was a kid and I would have dinner, with my parents at home, my mom would make steak. I would have ketchup on my steak. I admit it now. I used to when I was a kid, just to, I don't know, I didn't enjoy the taste of steak as much, so ketchup made it seem like more palatable as a kid. Now I don't do that, so don't
thank
come at me,
goodness.
please. I
Thank
haven't
goodness.
done that in years. So please don't come at me. But was this the scene when they were they making breakfast at home, or was this when they went out for pancakes or whatever?
I think that was the same scene because wait, no, those are different scenes because the going out for pancakes was when Joe was trying to play domesticated wife and mother and she burned the breakfast.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, what would they be eating with ketchup at breakfast? Unless it was home fries or something like that. I don't know.
Well, home fries is acceptable. That's just the one that was the
Home
one
fries
time.
is
Yeah,
acceptable.
that's acceptable.
That is acceptable.
The other one I had was Cruz always has an edge to her
Yeah.
in the first season. That she always has an edge to her, and I think it's a lot. I don't know necessarily always want to say it's ego. I think it's confidence because we did kind of see her rip through basic,
Hmm.
and she kicked ass, and she kind of rose to the cream of the crop pretty quickly.
Mm.
And obviously the way season one ended, Joe and Cruz have a very contested relationship. So when she's trying to sell Cruz to come back to the team to kind of help Carrillo with
Mm.
this new asset identification. Cruz kind of brass balling Joe, and she's like, "Oh, I do it for the challenge." And Joe just writes, "Oh, you run a challenge? Go fight in the UFC." And then I think at that point, I think she slams the door and walks out. Which I'm thinking to myself like, if Cruz for to fight in the UFC, I think she'll probably do pretty well. That may not be that much of a challenge.
You know what? I kind of feel like that comment came from a little bit of jealousy on Joe's part.
Hmm.
We did see in the first season, Cruz is very uh physically uh strong.
Yes.
That's the reason why she excels and why she ripped through basics. So I not to say that, Joe isn't thin and athletic and whatnot, but it's just not the same thing. I think there's a little bit of jealousy coming out from Joe with that.
Well, and Joe's a little bit of a suit now. I mean,
Right.
we see her
Oh,
more in the
yeah.
field in this season, but
Uh-huh.
she's definitely more of a suit than an actual operator. And I don't know, maybe she misses that lifestyle or
Maybe. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it could be. I just had two little funny parts. Well, not funny, but two cups when he has to use the bathroom, and that's putting it nicely in a nice way.
That was the
Uh
farting scene, right? That was the farting scene?
no, no, that wasn't the bed farting scene. This was when he eats something. Was it bisque? Some sort of bisque?
Oh. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he has
And
to
then
run. He has to do a beeline
yeah,
for the
and then he
toilet.
has to and Bobby and everyone else is taking a shower. They're like, "Are you kidding me? Like
That's
that
right.
stinks." Oh my, like they're
They all
freaking
run out.
out.
Yeah. They
They're
all
like, "You
bolt
pick
out. I'm
now for
sorry.
this?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, he's just super disgusting, two cups. He's ugh. I enjoyed the moments with him. And then last I this just related to me because I'm a little bit crunchy. So the fact that when Edwin shows up at Byron's house, I think Byron's daughter is talking about almond milk or something. And then the wife comes into the room and she's telling one of the kids to use arnica or something. So if you don't know what arnica is, it's like a holistic, I wouldn't say medicine, but it's a holistic remedy. So, which I mean, we don't have to get into it, but I don't really believe in almond milk and oh, dairy is evil and dairy is bad. So I don't believe in almond milk, but I did think it was funny that Byron's wife is, she's the wife of a CIA official and she's talking about all these like holistic things. And so I'm like, she is me. This is crazy.
She reads the cliff notes. She knows about the deep state.
Yeah, probably. So I mean we could talk forever about this, but why does this show start getting woke at the sixth episode every time? Like,
It's crazy how eerie the timing of it is. They let the show build up a lot of momentum. You get into it, you're enjoying it, and then they drop this on about roughly the same time in both seasons.
okay,
Eerie.
so yeah, so I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I was like, seriously, they're gonna do this again. It just it took a nosedive when that happened. And again, as I said, I was poking around on Reddit looking to see like, okay, do people want this relationship? Did they like this episode, the seventh episode? It turns out there was literally close to no one who is like, oh, I love this relationship. I hope something happens from it. Literally nobody. Everybody said, uh, we'll go off the name of a very popular Netflix show right now. Nobody wants this. Literally, nobody wants this Carrillo and Cruz relationship. So, everyone was moaning and groaning about it, like, why? Why did they do this? Ugh.
It's funny that you saw that on Reddit, which is hardly the bastion of conservative thought.
Yeah, but it's surprising. And a couple people mentioned they said either I'm in the military or I know somebody, like I'm married to somebody in the military, and they said that from their experience, there are a lot of lesbians in the I don't know if they said like in the Air Force or who are like, the helicopter pilots and that kind of thing. They said that's very common apparently. But the reason I have a problem with it is because of the fact that Cruz has a history of abuse. And
Mhm.
like I don't mean to call out anyone who's dealt with domestic abuse or anything, but the fact that we see her being abused when we first meet Cruz in the first season, and then she like becomes gay later, it's down to the facts. A lot of people who turn out to be gay or lesbian have been abused or molested in the past. So it kind of causes them to go that path. So I just don't like that that's what they're putting forth. And I mean, luckily to what you said, they were kind of saved by the team coming in with, oh,
Yeah.
you got the beer, you got the video games, you got the, I was like, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Bobby. Thank you, team, for coming in and saving this piece of shit.
Saved by the Bell. Saved by the Bell. Actually, I forgot about that first one. That was actually, it was actually saved twice because there was that where they're coming in to hang out, and then again right before they deploy, when they're like really starting to get saucy, and the alarm goes off. It's like, all right, we're going. We got to go. Wheels up. Let's do this.
Uh,
So it was kind of like I took a little solace in that. It's like, well, we didn't have to see like the whole weekend getaway again like they did with Aaliyah.
yeah. And I mean, again, we could talk about that for a whole hour about how annoying that is and frustrating it is that they just pulled that card again.
I
But
know.
instead, we'll talk about a different. I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit at this one where Edwin was talking about the government coming together. He was a senator, I believe, or something in the government, and
Well, I think he's the sex state. I think in season one at one point they mentioned him as sex state.
oh, I thought when he was talking about the government coming together after 9/11, I thought
Oh, way back.
he
I
was
see.
a
I see.
senator
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or something at the time, and they literally say they allude or they infer the fact that it's George W. Bush without saying his name. So to me, it kind of came forth as something that's either like a personal thought of Taylor Sheridan's or it's a personal thought of like the writers,
Mm-hmm.
right?
As far as omitting the POTUS's name.
Not really omitting his name, just kind of talking about like Edwin's voice in that moment is that person's whoever's opinion it is, the writer Taylor Sheridan.
Oh, I didn't necessarily get that in a negative as far as a negative light was concerned. Um, I thought you meant just like as far as not mentioning Bush by name, which that didn't necessarily pick up alarm to me because I know historically, at least of presence of relatively contemporary memory,
Yeah,
they don't Hollywood really doesn't do that anyway.
right.
Just kind of, at least in works like this, not like comedies or rom coms. They say presidents' names all the time, but like serious stuff like this, I kind of notice a trend where they really don't mention the president's name a lot. Like I said, at least Jimmy Carter, Reagan, not so much. The Bushes, Clinton, even certainly not going to say Trump's name, but
Right.
other than Hollywood starlet that he is, Barack Obama, that you really don't see the president's name mentioned in the course of a film or a show often,
Yeah,
if
I
at all.
mean, that wasn't unusual. And the fact that usually if they're talking about a president or an official, it's usually a fictional one most of the time.
Right. And I mean, and to your point, like I don't necessarily think it was done as a bit of a rub, only because there's obviously a lot of rabbit holes out there about the how 9/11 really got going. And but regardless of that, there was still a bit of a unification of the country after that.
Mhm.
So I think Mullins was kind of illustrating that as the country is divided now, and sadly we needed some an event like that to kind of bring everyone together.
Yeah, it was just an interesting moment. I was like, this has to be somebody's opinion of 9/11, just
Probably.
coming
Yeah.
forth in this little monologue that Morgan Freeman did.
Yeah.
And speaking of monologues, there was this whole rant that Carrillo's dad, Pablo Carrillo, went on at the dinner table where he's talking about the military being woke. And the
Mm-hmm.
way he does it, don't get me wrong, is very like offensive and brash the way that he says it. Basically saying he was in the military, so he's basically like, it's not my military. Like the military now is nothing like it used to be.
Hashtag not my military.
Yeah. And I think what that was supposed to do was supposed to make the viewer angry, like, oh, he's being so disgusting talking about our military like that. Like, I think it was supposed to be kind of an anti-woke opinion, But my hot take is that he's not wrong. Yes, the way
It
that he
wasn't.
said it, the
Yeah.
way that he said it was very vulgar. It was not respectful at all, but he wasn't wrong about the facts.
No, he really wasn't. And you can like it's just the goes back to the general argument. You can't just force feed all these social justice things
Yes.
into national defense. It's just it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense, and it'll wind up causing a problem later on. So I mean, yeah, he was over the top with a lot of his choice of verbiage, but I mean, honestly, at a certain point in current political discourse, we've gone so far in the other direction that
Hmm.
sometimes to get the point across, you might have to be a little offensive just to shake someone's brain cells a bit.
Yeah. So I was kind of sitting there like, you know what? He didn't say anything wrong. The way he said it maybe, but
Man ain't lying.
man ain't lying, even though he's a mild criminal with
Yes.
a checkered past.
Yeah.
But so getting to the last episode, I felt like I was distracted. I had a hard time paying attention. I was a little bit bored. I felt like it was a little bit lackluster. The momentum just wasn't there despite the action. Kind of, how did you feel generally?
I kind of thought the same way. It took a while to get going until the end, and but then I really enjoyed the action sequence. You had sniper rounds flying all over the place. You got the airstrike at the end to kind of save the day, that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So, like action wise, it really kind of picked up. It kind of saved the episode a little
Mm.
bit. Um, so that part I was kind of had a little bit of comeuppance for. What I couldn't figure out is why they were there in the first place. You know, like I kind of had this feeling. I kind of had this feeling that the mission was almost an intended failure,
Mm.
and and I dial back to our previous conversation about Westfield and Mullins having the conversation at home, and he's kind of implying that 9/11 was needed to be they needed a big a tragedy like that needed to occur to really
Hmm.
unify the country. So I kind of almost I'm like watching this and I know like this was kind of done on the down low. Mullins wasn't going to tell the president about clearing this. I was like, did they just go in and just try to stir some trouble up? Because I remember Westfield said something like, "We need to show that we're not the only country with an open border." Like, did they just go in to just stir some trouble up and intentionally start World War III?
Yeah, that's interesting because I didn't really think of it that way. It kind of begs the question, did they set it up or was it more of a tease to be like, oh, well, if you're not gonna include the president, like we'll let things get pretty bad and then we'll swoop in and save your asses at the last possible moment because, Joe is literally sitting there. She's looking around her. She sees people on her team getting shot up. Two Cups gets shot. The helicopter goes down with Cruz and Carrillo.
Yeah,
So
she's
she kind of,
messed up.
yeah, she sees everything around her going to shit. And I think she's thinking like, this is the moment that I die, or this is the moment that we
Oh
all
yeah,
die. And then that's when the fighter jets come in and then the people on foot. So, I mean, it could be sort of oh, see, we got you, and you're lucky because you didn't tell the president about this whole thing, and we're still saving your asses. So yeah, it could be sort of a way that the government ensures that that mission is indebted to them, right?
and I mean there could be that too because I think at the end I don't remember whether it was just happy timing because they had
Mm,
their one of the officers there that was in charge of the airstrike, or I think Mullins implies that like, well, let me tell the POTUS and tell him how
yeah.
he's screwed up. So and like one of the ambassadors is trying to get him on the phone. He's like, no, let him hang for a minute. So like
Mm,
so that could be the case. Maybe they did say, oh, let's put our tail between our legs and go back to the higher authority and figure out what we need to save our team right now.
Yeah, it definitely could be a little bit of the government playing games, which I didn't even think of that, at the moment. So it's funny that you picked up on that. It could be like let's have some disaster to bring everyone together, and then it just at the last minute they were like, "No, I guess we won't do that,"
Yeah, which is horrible to think that, because the military industrial complex is a thing. So to stage this whole thing and then have it be somewhat behind closed doors from POTUS authority and that sort of thing, it's kind of like it kind of lends credence to the fact of these manufactured tragedies to gin up federal spending and defense spending, that sort of thing.
And speaking of tragedies, like the tragedy of Joe and Neil's marriage,
Yeah.
Joe goes home afterward and she kind of walks up sheepishly and she's like, "Oh, I wasn't sure if there would be a place for me here." And Neil says, "Oh, there's always a place for you." And they embrace. But all I'm thinking in the back of my mind is if there's a third season of this show, they're just going to go through the same roller coaster arc again, where at the beginning of the season, they're all happy, they're all in love. Then Joe's going to get that call where she's going to say, "Oh, sorry, I have to go away for a little bit." And then Neil's all mad about it. And then they get mad about the same issues over and over again. It goes through the same cycle in the roller coaster of their marriage where they have all this resentment for each other. So yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
probably going to happen next season.
Especially if they try to trigger World War III intentionally. I'm sure that call's coming. There's no way she's gonna be able to say, "Oh yeah, no, I'm not gonna. I'm done with this. I'm gonna stay home and be the family mother now."
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, about the next season and how there are there are questions like is Two Cups alive? Is Carrillo able to, be in the military still with her leg injury? Is she alive? So there's some questions with that, but damn well that Joe's not going to be like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore. I have to retire. I can't do this to my family." That she's not going to do that. She's going to be right back up in there.
Well, and to your point with Carrillo on her discharge, I mean, they got her discharged specifically so she could work for their team.
Right. True.
So she's kind of tied. She's either tied to their team or she's not.
Yeah, and then I don't know, just because we were speaking about George W. earlier, it made me think of the time when he was misquoting the famous "Fool me once, shame on you" or quote, and he messes it up. And I feel like I really went into the second season giving this show the benefit of the doubt. The first season, it was like, "Fool me once. You guys pulled the shit in the sixth episode of the first season. I'll give it another chance." But then when it happened again in the sixth episode of the second season, I was kind of like, "All right, fool me twice. I give up, guys. I can't do this anymore." Not to rip it a new one, but I just I don't know that I can withstand a third season because I feel like it's just going to happen again. If it's not Carrillo, it's going to be another
Yeah.
person that comes in that's introduced to Cruz, who Cruz has this connection with, and it's just going to turn into the same thing again. I can just see it.
Yeah. I mean, I will, like, from the previous point, like, I don't necessarily share the anti-Joe sentiment, but I hear you on the Cruz stuff. But outside of the Cruz love angles and whatever they're trying to do there, I generally enjoy the series as a whole. So I would probably risk being fooled a third time, and I'll probably set myself up down the Umbrella Academy road, or the show that shall not be named in the morning show.
Ugh.
So, but I almost kind of wonder, and mind you, I have no knowledge of this. I've not Googled it. I don't know anything about the actor's backstory, but Layla or de Oliveira, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever the actress's name that plays Cruz, not. I wonder if she's LGBT activist of sorts in real life. Again,
Hmm.
I don't know that I have no knowledge whatsoever because this is such um oddity from every other Taylor Sheridan product. They just don't do this in his shows. So for this to be the one outlier makes me think that there's some other influence with this show that they force in, social issues and that sort of thing.
Right. It's like whose agenda is it? Is it the
Mhm.
writers? It doesn't seem like it's Taylor Sheridan because I don't think he's like the primary writer for this show. So yeah, you kind of wonder in situations like Umbrella Academy where you had Ellen Elliott Page kind of, and a lot of times you do have these LGBTQ IA plus uh insert symbol here. I don't know. You
Alphabet
have
soup.
yeah, you have all of these people wanting to be like, oh, well, I'm this, so I want to put this forward on screen if you could write that in, So is she one of those people trying to say, I need representation? Can you please put it in the show? I'm not sure. That would be interesting to find out because otherwise, where is it coming from? Where is the pressure? Where is the agenda coming from?
Yeah, like I said, total tinfoil hat theory. I
Yeah.
know nothing about the actor's life or backstory. Nothing.
Yeah, and if she's not, then who is pushing this? And it's just strange.
Yeah, it could just be some rogue writer that's got a woke axe to grind, which is weird because all the other anti woke things that are in the script.
Yeah, it's an interesting and knowing a little bit of Taylor Sheridan's politics, it seems like he's sort of a center guy as far as politics. So yeah, it's just I'm not sure where that pressure is coming from, but honestly, if I guess because like I'm still very fresh with this and I'm still feeling all the feelings. I wonder if, it's going to take probably a year for them to shoot and put out the third season. So maybe a year down the line, I might sing a different tune. But if you ask me right now, like if I have to be subjected to another cruise relationship storyline, like I am going to scream.
I would probably scream too, but you know what? The decision may get made for us because this episode could blow up for a few hundred views and up another 50 audio downloads. So
But it doesn't I mean you said that the cruise thing like doesn't bother you, but like it doesn't sour your like
oh, it
otherwise
does.
great opinion of the show, like it doesn't affect you.
It does. No, because there's so many other things going on in the show that I can find attachment to and enjoy. Especially like we said with the way this one, the Saved by the Bell thing. It kind of wasn't. It didn't feel like the whole weekend getaway type of thing.
Yeah, I just it makes me sad because I it could have been something that was like pretty good. Like, okay, so I am annoyed by Zoe Saldana. I am annoyed by the character of Joe, how it's written, I think. But I would have liked to see more of these actors, Michael Kelly, the guy who plays Neil, the guy who plays Kyle. And I would have liked to see more of the team, Bobby and all the team together, but I don't know. The fact that I don't enjoy the main character in the show kind of puts a damper on it for me. And the fact that I just feel I have PTSD. I feel like they're going to do this
Yeah,
again in the sixth episode.
yeah. It's the Pavlov's dog thing. You're waiting for that episode. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Where's it coming? Where's it coming?
Yeah, well, speaking of waiting for episodes, don't wait around for our episodes. We'll have one coming to you shortly. If you enjoy listening to our show, we would appreciate if you gave us 5 stars, left us some love on there. Also, make sure you follow along with us on Instagram and TikTok. He is Nutmeg, the number 2 Palmetto on both platforms. I am Binge the Ginge with dots between the words for Instagram, without the dots on TikTok. Give us both follows on social and stay tuned to the show on all of our platforms. For YouTube and Rumble, you can see our lovely faces. For Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Apple Podcasts, you can listen to our lovely voices. For the next episode, we'll come sit down on a metaphorical sofa and discuss how we really feel about season 2 of Shrinking on Apple TV. And this just may be the first straight up comedy we've ever covered. And don't come at me and say that The Bear counts, because The Bear is not a comedy.
Despite what the Emmys and Globes say.
Exactly. That they did that on purpose, and we could talk about that for hours, but we won't do that. So do a quick catch up of Shrinking. It's a quick 30-minute show usually. So watch all those episodes and then tune into our catch up coming soon. Until the next real review, Red and Red signing out.
In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world.
Don't act so surprised, Your Highness.
Hey guys, you ready to let the dogs out?
What? Do what?
No. Try not. Do. Or do not.
Because I don't want no scrubs.
Let the dogs out, you know, like, who let the dogs out? Who brought this guy along?
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this shit.
One more thing. Do me a favor. Don't go chasing waterfalls.
Mankind, that word should have new meaning for all of us today.
You're gonna need a bigger boat. Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
I'll take care, all right? None but love for you. None but love for you.
Have any clue what's about to happen to him?
Oh, not a chance in hell. Good night.
Peace! Smile, you son of a...
You did. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
Toodaloo, motherfucker. Hey,
Not funny anymore.
TLC references. Still, nothing. I swear to you.
But as the day when the world declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night, we will not vanish without a fight, we're going to live on. We're going to survive. Today, we celebrate our Independence Day.